To welcome our chief guest for this session, Deputy Chairman, Planning Commission, Government of India, Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia. He's here for the Mindmine exchange, the growth imperative, which is a freewheeling discussion which touches upon a host of issues ranging from politics affecting policy making, the investment climate in 2013 and 14, and direct benefits transfer, among others. And for this one-on-one with Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, we have Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal. It's over to you, Mr. Munjal.
Thank you. Montek, thank you very much for coming in. I know your very, very hectic schedule, and you've been busy personally with the wedding in the family and also with the kind of work that's going on both in the government and in India. So truly appreciate this and happy that instead of dropping out of the final closing session, you chose to ask for a change in time. So it's good that we could have you here at this time. We just thought it'll be good to have an informal chat with you to understand a little bit about what you are thinking, about what's going on, and also a little bit about yourself. So somebody once said, punctual, careful, amiable, optimistic, conscientious, intelligent, articulate. It's also said there are very few chinks in Montek's armor. Maybe that's why he's survived so many different political eras. So tell me, Montek, you came in from a completely different background into government. That's now, was it more than 2 decades ago?
79.
So that's longer than that. It's now 3 decades ago. Yeah. So was that transition an easy one or a difficult one for you to make?
Well, I found it, well, first of all, let me say I love those adjectives.
I'll send them to you if you like.
It's nice for you to start off with punctual since I'm late today. But I think you knew that I got caught up in something.
Yep.
No, I don't think it was difficult at all. That's not to say that you just carry on doing what you're doing. I mean, remember, I came in from an international bureaucracy into a national bureaucracy. And I was very aware that there are cultural differences that define institutions. I actually wanted to get into this system. So I wasn't asking questions like, why are these guys not like those guys are? But I would say that, the really interesting question, which I think we need to think about in future, is the Indian system resistant to bringing in people from the outside? And actually, in my view, as long as the rules are very clear, it's not. The difference is, in our system, being senior or junior is very important.
Yep.
So I was very aware that if I came into the system at a particular level, I would perennially be junior to everybody above me, and also perennially senior to everybody below me. But the difference was that I got into this position 9 years younger than most people would get it. Mm-hmm. So essentially, very soon, I was up there. My movement upward probably was, in terms of positions, was not that different from my colleagues at that time. Only difference is they were much older than me. And of course, I lucked out in getting some very interesting positions. I mean, moving to Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's office as additional secretary is not the same thing as just being promoted.
Correct.
But people accept that some people will get some positions, others will get others. What they're really concerned about is no double promotions, and that was the key. No, I think at least when I was there was a lot of collegiality. I believe that's gone down since then. But certainly when we looked at senior people, people who were secretaries at the time, I think there was a lot of collegiality amongst them. Okay, and I think the civil service had quite a lot of collegiality even at lower levels.
So I was actually going to ask you this. There was a window when Sam came in, you came in, Rakesh Mohan came in. There was a bunch of so-called intellectual experts from overseas, Indian overseas, who came in at that time, and then almost nothing for quite a while. We are now seeing a different trend. People like Ramadurai helping the system on skills, Nandan getting involved in government, Arun Maira getting into the planning commission. So is this a new way of things to happen in the future? Do you think we will see more such individuals, experts, entrepreneurs, professionals getting into government, either temporarily or permanently? Are we more open to this?
Well, it's very, I think as Yogi Berra said, it is very difficult to make predictions, especially about the future. So factually, it's not the case that there were some people and then nothing happened. I would say in my generation or slightly senior to me, Bimal Jalan came in and he sort of served a full term and then retired. Other people who came in, Shankaracharya, now he left the government before his superannuation, but he was brought in. Arvind Virmani, Rakesh Mohan, all these guys came in for that. And more recently, Kaushik Basu as Chief Economic Advisor.
Now Raghu.
Most recently, Raghuram Rajan as Chief Economic Advisor. So I think we have had people coming in from outside. On the question of whether we need more, absolutely with a capital A and a capital B and a capital S. I've said this many times, and I think it's true that in the 1970s, it's probably true that 80% of knowledge on most things was either within the government or within the public sector. That's simply not true today. 80% is outside. And therefore, the idea that you're going to run government without a two-way flow of domain knowledge, in my view, is unsound. Okay? I don't think we have accepted that yet. Although, economists were always kind of given a dispensation. But, if somebody were to say that, look, we're creating a certain domain knowledge things in areas which are not just administration, telecom, IT, health, a whole range of things. And you create middle to seniorish level positions where the idea is these people will come and then they'll go back. Now, the definition of having domain knowledge is that you have a market.
Yep.
So their view is that, look, if you have a market, then why do you want a job? You come in for 2-3 years and go back to your market. I think we need to do that.
Brazil tried that, the reverse manner
what
as
it
well.
means is in the private sector,
Yep.
we have to create a culture where people in the private sector will be chucking up huge sums of money in order to work for a much lower salary in government. But that's what they do in the United States. Let's take a simple thing like intellectual property. Now, the idea that work on intellectual, which is actually a contentious thing,
especially
because
nowadays.
it's not just something where you're interpreting a government rule. Whatever you do is challengeable, not just challengeable in your own courts, but challengeable internationally, WTO, etc. We need to be advised by, let us say, top-class patent lawyers.
Practitioners, yeah.
I'm sure, I don't know if some of my legal friends are here, but just ask them what is the ratio of the salary that, let's say, a moderately good patent lawyer would expect to get, and let's say an additional secretary to the government of India, even after you factor in the perks. So, persuading these people to come in is going to be a big issue. Because I think if you're bringing people from outside, you can't be wanting the patent lawyer who on the whole thinks it's a good idea, because that's not what you want. You want to get someone who initially will say, are you crazy?
Jump in, yeah.
And then think about it and say, it's time for you to do some national work. And frankly, it would be good for them professionally in the future if they worked inside also.
But I can tell you, we are seeing a slight change in this trend now. we are setting up a new university just outside Delhi, and we are hoping it will be a truly world-class university. So we are going around talking to people, including friends, senior professionals, executives, and many people have said, I'd like to spend some time either teaching a class, either lecture once a year, or come in for X number of weeks a year, and knowing that this doesn't pay anything close to what they get as executives. So I think there is that desire to give back, which you're seeing now more and more in people. And I'm talking about Indians both in India and overseas.
No, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I'm completely agreed with you. You know, frankly, I think government, there's always room for new ideas. And unfortunately, in our system, there's very little thought given to HR. I mean, I've never run a company, but I did run a small office for the World Bank. Not the World Bank, the IMF.
The IMF,
For 3 years, I had gone off to be the head of their independent evaluation
office. It is a new office you set up.
Yeah.
It didn't exist.
And do you know that is the only time ever that I've actually recruited anybody. Because otherwise, in all the government jobs that I've done, and I've enjoyed them, the system does not actually allow me to choose the people that I want to work for. Now, you have to ask yourself, yes, I can imagine some constraints, but I think anyone running a company, if told that you're responsible for something, but we don't want your prejudices to determine who's going to be part of your team, would just burst out laughing, right? So I think we need to modernize personnel big time, and it's not easy. But other countries have done it. I think there's very little thinking devoted to the issue of what are the reforms in personnel management, which would actually, my own experience, by the way, working within government now for a long time, some of the best people that I've worked with are in government, and they're quite competitive with people internationally. The difference is I can't choose a team.
Yep.
So,
and they can't choose a role
change
either.
that.
Yeah. Yep.
If I were to say this is just the right person for the job, there are 40,000 reasons, and he's a government servant, or she's a government servant, 40,000 reasons why they can't be posted, where I think they should be posted.
Personal question. We always see you in a blue turban, a light blue colored turban, all the time. I haven't seen you.
No, not all.
I was told when you were in Oxford, you used to wear a pink one.
That was much younger.
Yeah.
But even in Delhi, when I play golf, I wear different colors.
Oh, okay.
This is my workaday office.
This is your official dress.
Yeah.
Right. So, since you mentioned Bimal Jalan, on one of these retail websites, there is a 1 rupee note signed by Monte Carlo for sale. I'm not sure if you're aware of this.
Yeah.
You are? Okay. Is that a sign of things to come?
No, by the way, it's a sign of things past. Because, in our system, I don't know why, but 1 rupee notes were issued by the finance ministry. So one of the first things, and the economic secretary.
Okay.
All other notes are issued by the Reserve Bank.
Right.
So
no, I'm asking because they don't print any more 1 rupee notes. So I'm talking about the other notes. 1 rupee is only coins now. They don't no new notes now.
Well, actually, I'm the last. My notes have a scarcity value because I think it was during my period that we decided that it didn't make any sense to print 1 rupee notes. So if you have a 1 rupee note signed by me, hang on to it because it will be one of the last in that series of notes.
So you have a family of fairly successful professionals, each one of them. Your wife is a very senior economist. Both your sons are very busy with what they do. So are your daughter-in-laws. So what kind of a conversation takes place on the dinner table at home?
That's a good question, actually. No, very animated, and like everybody else, we talk about whatever's going on in the world, in the country, and so on. We certainly don't talk about our professions, and that's what you mean,
So I understand you had a choice when you joined World Bank to either join Unilever or World Bank. And till you picked the second one.
I don't know where you got that from. Maybe it's one of these. No, when
Is that a myth?
I did moderately well in Oxford. and I received an invitation from one of the board members of Unilever. That was Maurice Zinkin, who was in the ICS here.
Right.
Tyre Zinkin's husband. So he had invited me to come and have dinner with him at some club in London and said, look, I heard you just graduated and you did well and so on. So what about joining Unilever, and then we'll send you to Hindustan Lever and whatever. But I was always more kind of public sector oriented type of fellow. So while I enjoyed the dinner and also enjoyed the idea of being offered a job, it's interesting, by the way, the World Bank, like any other bureaucracy, you had to apply to a job. The only difference was they sent a recruiter here. I have to say that good old Unilever, the only people who actually reached out to me and said, we want to offer you a job. So that also tells you something about recruitment. It's something, by the way, the government cannot easily do. But no, I mean, I was pleased, but by then I knew that the World Bank was also an option.
So no regrets? No regrets?
Well, actually, I don't know, I was a bit torn between just joining the government, IAS here and going abroad. I thought that I was not actually just interested in administration. I mean, I wanted to be an economist looking at economic issues. And the World Bank gave the opportunity of seeing what's happening around the world.
I understand you also want to be a journalist before you became an economist?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I thought I would like to do when I was an undergraduate. When I was an undergraduate, the Economic Times first came out, this sort of pink paper. And for most of us who were economists, that looked like quite an interesting new sort of profession where you could write about economics. So I did toy with that also.
So are you a real foodie, or is it just that the House of Ming knows what you like and that they serve you without taking your order?
No. I never allow any restaurant to serve me without taking an order. But I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm captive to the House of Ming. I mean, I do experiment with restaurants around. Am I a foodie? That's very difficult to define what is a foodie. But yeah, I think moderately I would say yes. I quite enjoy the idea of taking a little bit of time over what you're ordering and what you're eating and so forth.
Coming back to the current situation in policy making, how much do you think between now and the middle of next year will politics affect policy making? And if it will have a serious coloration, how much would it affect the plan as it's been defined right now?
See, I think, I mean, when you say policy making, I don't know what you mean by policy making. By definition, in the last year of a government, if we haven't made the policies, then we're doing something seriously wrong. In my view, 90%, once the budget is passed, 90% of all effort between now and the election should have nothing to do with new policy. Because the truth of the matter is, even if you announce a new policy, by the time they get the rules written, etc., it is not going to have any impact on performance. On the other hand, implementing the policies we already have can have a major impact. And I personally think that 90% of the effort should be on the implementation side. Now, there are lots of things on the agenda. This whole cabinet committee on investment. That's not policy making. It's sort of actual government.
So how much impact do you think it will have, the cabinet committee on investment?
I think it'll have a lot. I mean,
and
I don't know if you read
is it fully functional? They have had a couple of meetings, I'm told.
It has had 2 or 3 meetings,
yes.
And I think the Prime Minister, in his CII address, sort of stated all the things that it had done. Now, it's quite interesting that, I mean, obviously that's a weakness of the government, that it doesn't project its own decisions. But certainly the press has taken very little interest in making those decisions known, and I don't expect them to. But I would say that, several very large and very important projects which had been stuck have come unstuck. Probably out of another 31 projects on the petroleum side, I mean, I think 25 of them will get sorted out, maybe in the next 10 days or 2 weeks or so. I think the biggest single thing is the fuel supply for power plants, particularly on the coal side. I think that will get sorted out.
It will get sorted out.
Absolutely. Whether it gets sorted out in a way that people like is another issue. I mean, the bottom line is there's only so much coal. You have to import coal. Imported coal is more expensive. So you have to find a way to determine who's going to have to rely on imported coal. I think they'll sort that out.
So the latest PMI data, that's the Purchase Managers Index, incidentally, shows very worrying figures, especially on core data and even things like automotive figures. So is that something one should be worried about now on the underlying demand trends? And do you think there's any potential downside to the economy in this coming year? Because most of us had said the economy this year should do better than last year. Now, with the kind of data which we have seen, is this something which should concern us?
No, when you're in a downturn, you should always be concerned. I mean, after all, there's no point in simply tempting fate. Okay, my view is that I share the view that it will be better, primarily because I think on these implementation fronts, we will see movement. Okay, how quickly the PMI data are, over several months, they're a reliable indicator. But in the last 6 months, there have been periods when somebody said, oh, the PMI data has gone up, and so we all declared green shoots of recovery. Now they go down, then everybody says. So frankly, these are periodic data, and you have to take them with a pinch of salt. I would only say that there is no sign at the moment of a strong recovery. But I think there's a sign of bottoming out. So I don't expect the growth rate to be worse, that's for sure. Now, whether it will go up to 6.5, which is what the finance minister envisaged in the budget, I think is what the debate should be about. Now, a lot of people, I mean, obviously, if you think 5 is going down, then you would really question that. But if you believe that at least this is bottomed out, then the question is, do you believe in 1 year that it can go up by 1.5 percentage points? And the short answer is absolutely yes. But let me say that will depend very much on people's judgment in the next 2 months, whether a sufficient number of, I would say, upfront decisions, front-loaded decisions have been taken. I don't think we are in a position where we can be saying, well, it's all gradually rolling out over the course of the year. So I think we should be concentrating it. So I think 2 months from now, if you have the same discussion with someone, you should ask them the question, do you think that in the last 2 months, the government's taken a lot of good decisions? And if they say no, then I'm wrong.
In fact, this was a concern, as you know, for the first few years of this government, the current government, there was this oft-heard refrain that the government is not making enough decisions, it's not taking enough actions, the economy is going down, we are affected both by internal and external factors, and we need to see more action on the ground. And 6 months ago or so, we started to see, again, I'm saying policy loosely, but we started to see both policy and action happen. First, is there something you individually or the Planning Commission could have done to trigger some more action earlier? And what actually happened? What made the system make up or change its mind and start policy announcements which had been stuck for some time?
That's a tough, I mean, in government, I mean, everybody has a very segmented view, so it's difficult to tell what should have happened. We have always been clear that a lot of action is needed, and we've been saying this for the last year or two. I feel that the public perception of inaction by the government, I mean, it's one of those things, when the economy does well, everybody says, oh, great, wonderful. When it doesn't do well, it's very easy to dump on the government. And the fact of the matter is that it's really probably in the last year or so, all of last year, and last year being 2012, 2013, and maybe even the last 6 months of the preceding year, that there was an obvious sign that the economy is kind of losing steam. So I think in retrospect, there's no doubt that action should have been taken earlier. But you know, I mean, in 2011, December, or somewhere there, you had a UP election. Now, UP is a large state, and in any political system, the tendency is to hold back until after the UP election. So, I mean, that would certainly have added 3 to 4 months in terms of delay in the process. I think the other thing, quite frankly, is that when you're, I mean, the Prime Minister has been very frank about this, that, you know, coalition governments do have constraints, and a certain amount of time does get spent in trying to persuade your allies, and then the time comes when if you can't persuade your allies, you have to do what you have to do. What you're really saying is it would have been a good thing if this had happened 6 months earlier, probably.
Or even 2 years earlier. So I'm going to open the questions to the House. So if anybody has a question, please raise your hand. We'll try and get a mic to you. And please ask a question and try and keep it short. Can you get a mic here, please? So you can try and get in a few of them before we close the session.
The general perception is that we make excellent policies. The Indian think tank is able to make very good policies, but the place where we falter is in its implementation. Do we need an implementation commission or a review commission, or is there a kind of a mismatch in this?
No, you know, I'm frequently, this is frequently bounced at almost anyone in government. And it's usually said in a kind of a way where people want to say, as you put it, you're making excellent policies, but the problem is implementation. Implicit in that is that the credit goes for making the policies and somebody is failing to implement them. I don't actually buy that. I think, you know, there's no such thing as an excellent policy and somebody is not implementing it. I personally think that the business of actually implementing policies is a lot more complicated. It has become a lot more complicated. And in many ways, we are not adequately, we haven't actually realized what the reasons for the logjam are. Some of them, admittedly, are the result of simply, if you like, different perceptions on the part of maybe different ministers or different members of the coalition on what is a good thing and what is not a good thing. That's a more basic, you know, in our system, when you say you make policies, I mean, if you go, let me not talk about the Planning Commission, but let me take the Economic Survey. It's regarded as a very important annual document. Just as one might say about the plan, a lot of what is said in the plan doesn't actually get implemented. The same thing is true of the annual survey. So if you were to judge the government's policies by what is stated in the annual survey, and I'm not talking about now or 2 years from, I mean, when the economy was growing at 9%, there was a gap between what was being done and what was being stated. That is many of these documents are meant to lay out the medium-term direction, okay? I think what has happened more recently is that governments have become, or rather government functionaries have become extremely unwilling to take any decision. And in my view, if you think of the infrastructure area, it is now riddled with, if you like, contradictory pulls. I mean, it's impossible to build any infrastructure in the country without having to take certain steps, you know, which might be viewed by some people as environmentally damaging, okay? Now, if there's a very strong perception that, no, the environment is being damaged, you can stop every project in the country. If you have a situation where there's a lot of judicial activism on these areas, so it's not that people say, oh, this is environmentally not so good, and you go to the Prime Minister's office, or you go straight to court. So if you're going to go to court, civil servants are also going to want to avoid being caught in that particular trap. I think this has got more complicated because infrastructure is no longer being built only by the public sector. I mean, that is government policy. You know, if you were to say infrastructure must be built by the public sector, I can tell you now, you will get half the infrastructure you think you'll get. So let us simply say that we're going to grow at 4.5%. Now, if you're not prepared to do that, then we should be very clear that the strategy which the Planning Commission has outlined, which the PM has outlined, and actually which yesterday Mr. Rahul Gandhi also endorsed, that infrastructure has to be built by the private sector also. This must be accepted. Now, if you start with that, you have a huge problem because nobody can build any major project without potential conflicts of different kinds. This used to happen in the public sector also. The only difference is that when these things happen in the public sector, I mean, the government would resolve these issues. I mean, either BHEL is wrong or Coal India is wrong or NTPC is wrong, and you just say, well, look, you're being unreasonable, you do this, they'll do that, etc. When you are doing a private sector operation, at the other side of every dispute is a private company. Now, to resolve those disputes, I mean, unless the idea is that every dispute must be resolved on the maximal government, pro-government side, you need to have a situation where somebody is going to say, well, you know, I think this is fair, this is not fair. I think you've created an environment where nobody in the bureaucracy wants to take that decision. End of story. That's why the Cabinet Committee on Investment was set up, basically to collectively have a political responsibility for taking those decisions. And I personally think that if the Cabinet Committee works and takes those decisions, you know, subsequent decisions will follow simply on the precedent. Now you look at the list that the Prime Minister talked about. Linear projects. On some interpretation of environment, if you are going to stretch a transmission wire across the countryside, that's a project. Do you have to get the consent of every Gram Sabha through whose area this wire passes? Until recently, that was the reading. Now it's deemed not to be the case. So, you know, that's just one example. There are a huge number of these things which were actually holding up the processing of decision. Now we have to see whether what the Cabinet Committee has done actually speeds things up or there are other constraints. But that's what is necessary, not making policies. Policies are okay. I mean, after all, look, it's exactly these policies we grew at 9% for 5 years. In my view, if not a single bill is passed by Parliament until the next general election, we can still grow at 8%. I mean, that doesn't mean they shouldn't pass it after the next general election. But you know, most bills that are going to be passed, action on the ground will take place after the rules are written and I mean, not between now and May 2014.
Shireen.
I want to take you back to the speech that everybody's talking about. Rahul Gandhi yesterday said that the perception is if you're Montague's friend, you find a voice in business. What happens to Montague's enemies?
I don't think he quite said that.
He quite said that, exactly, word for word.
I think the dominant thing he was saying was that we need ways that people's voices can be heard. I'm not sure that what he was saying is that the only people who get heard are Montague's friends. And, you know, I just happened to be sitting in the front row. They must have looked around and I was the only government fellow sitting there. But look, I think he had a deeper message, many deeper messages. But on this particular one, I think his feeling was that we don't seem to be in a sufficiently consultative process in which there's quite a frank articulation on the part of different groups, and not just business. I mean, he talked about other groups also. So that, you know, what needs to be done is more transparently discussed and points of view expressed and decisions taken. I agree with that. I mean, I think we need better systems to do that. Of course, a lot of people then said, but CII does the representing. But he said, look, we want to go beyond just that.
So last one before we wrap up. You know, it was important to cut back on the fiscal deficit clearly, and the current account deficit is a concern too. But what we did do is cut back on planned expenditure. All of the cut was actually on planned expenditure. And in fact, non-plan actually went up. So that is worrying many people about our ability to continue to do this and the longer term impact of this. What's your view on this?
When you say
It was
plan,
capex,
when you
yeah.
say plan
All of
expenditure,
the cutback was on capex.
yeah, there are two different things altogether.
Yeah, I'm saying it was part
Because
of the plan
a
expenditure.
lot of
It was
what
all
you call
capex.
plan
All of it.
expenditure is not
Yeah.
capital.
So it was
No,
all
I think
capex.
that is substantially correct.
Yeah.
You know, it has been the point of view of government and many other people also that in the aftermath of the 2008 crisis, some fiscal stimulus was a good idea. I mean, I was in favor of it.
Which was good, by the way. It helped us a lot at that time.
Well, I think the difference, I mean, there are two ways we could have done it. One is we could have said, look, this is the time to build all that infrastructure that we otherwise aren't able to build. So, since this is going to be government money, let's put it all in roads and railways and this and that and the other, spend a lot of money. And when the time comes to back off from this expenditure, well, you just slow down the pace of construction. I have not the slightest doubt that that would have been the right thing to do. But actually what happened is not so much plan, non-plan and so on. A lot of it was an increase in subsidies. And the increase in subsidies was dominantly because an unwillingness to raise prices. So it's not as if there was a conscious decision to increase subsidies. But we've run into a subsidy system where unless you consciously increase prices, subsidies will go up. And I have no doubt that, you know, if you make a judgment about the quality of the fiscal stimulus, the quality of the fiscal stimulus would have been much better if we had put it in capex. Plan and non-plan is not at all the distinction.
Yeah,
I'm glad to see that Surjit has arrived.
Yeah.
So he will set you right on what his view is on plan, non-plan. I mean, there's good plan and there's not so good plan, and there's good non-plan and not so good non-plan. So those are different things.
All right. On that note, Montek, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here and enlightening us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we have a small memento as a mark of thanks for Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia? We have the group chairman himself likes to present that. Can we put our hands together for Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia? Thank you very much, sir, for being here, having spared your time.